welcome to my channel. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel and welcome to day 21 of Vlogmas 2025. How are you doing today? I thought I would first of all start the day by going out and looking for some ingredients for cookies, mainly things like nuts and decorations, and I'm not going to be doing too many cookies this year for the simple fact that I don't really eat a lot of sweets or sugary cookies. I'll make a few and that's about it. Hi everybody, and so before I get my day going, I think I'm going to stop off for a coffee. Sounds right to me. Hi guys, so this is the brown sugar cream coffee, and judging from the advertisement images, this is not how it's supposed to look, but it's brown sugar, so I know it's going to be good. And good it definitely is. I just love the taste of brown sugar, so yeah, I highly recommend it. Even though I'm not sure about the way it looks, it certainly tastes delicious.
it, and what works for one might not work for others. We all know this. We like the test, and my sisters and I got $5.
Guys, I'm home now and I have a little bit of a haul for you, and to tell you the truth, I really don't know yet what kind of cookies I feel like baking, but let's have a look at the decorations and the other items that I bought. Well, what do you know, I finally found green sprinkles, and I haven't seen these guys in 2 years. I also bought some multicolored Dragon Balls and some white sprinkles, red sprinkles, blue sprinkles, and I'm not really keen on using all of these for my little tiny batch of cookies, but because I have a hard time finding these, I decided to stock up. I also picked up some dry cranberries, golden raisins, some raw pistachios, and chopped walnuts, some mixed fruit, and these are dates, coconut flakes, I love those, and slivered almonds, and pine nuts. So all that came to about $45, and so I really, last year I made gingerbread men, and the year before I made my mother's almond cookies, and so this year I'm not sure what I want to make. Maybe something different, or maybe I'll just make my late mother's almond cookie recipe again. I don't know. Hi guys, I thought that I would spend the next few minutes talking about maybe not something that will interest everybody, but it's so interesting to me. And I remember touching on this at another Christmas. And so I was doing some research for my other channel, and I came across some very amazing facts regarding some of the earliest Christian saints. And I'm not trying to push religion here or anything, but there is something about the conviction of these early martyrs who were absolutely, they were so full of confidence and faith. Nothing could shake their beliefs in Christianity. And so I kind of got inspired by that, because if you are struggling with an issue in this day and age, it always helps to understand that your convictions are going to be, they kind of define you, don't they? They're going to be with you no matter what. And if you're kind of wishy-washy about things, or you don't know enough about things to make a proper decision, I think that we should try to focus on trying to get on one side of an issue and trying to back up one side on that issue as much as we can by understanding it and getting to know all the facts of all sides and parties involved, because sometimes you can make a wrong decision based on things that you don't know, right? So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit, just a little bit, about these couple of saints that really piqued my interest, and I can't seem to, get them out of my mind. It's a very sensitive and touchy subject, but I want to share it with you. Hi guys, so I'm gonna be trying a little of this, warmed up with a little chocolate, hot cocoa, and we'll see how it turns out. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of this Christmas flavoring that I've been using in my coffee off and on, and we'll see how that tastes. So let's see how this chocolate eggnog tastes, shall we? Divine. The catacombs of Priscilla in Rome are dedicated to Saint Priscilla, as well as countless other saints, and the actual catacombs stretch for 8 miles in veneration of all of these saints and martyrs who suffered at the cause of their belief in Christianity. Priscilla and Aquila are described in legend as a first-century Christian couple who were a missionary married couple who are described in the First Testament as traditionally among the 70 disciples, especially Aquila. And they lived, worked, and traveled with the Apostle Paul. And Paul described Priscilla and Aquila as his own fellow workers in Christ Jesus. And so, yeah, that's who they were initially. And although other sources describe them slightly differently, that's generally the description they are given across the globe. And so Priscilla and Aquila are among the earliest known Christian missionaries of the first century. Now, that's a long time ago. And Priscilla and Aquila were tent makers, as Paul was. And as you'll see, another source describes the couple differently. But let's just get through this version. Priscilla and Aquila had been among other Jews who were expelled from Rome by the Roman Emperor Claudius in the year 49. And I believe that would be the year 49 AD. And this actual fact has been historically documented by the historian Suetonius. And I studied Suetonius in university. And so if it's documented by a historian such as Suetonius, you can basically guarantee that it happened. And so the couple, Priscilla and Aquila, ended up traveling, I don't know if it was on foot or donkey, mule, horse. They ended up in Greece, in Corinth. And Paul ended up living with the couple for 18 months. So that's quite a while. And so they must have been very familiar with each other. Then the couple, Aquila and Priscilla, started out to accompany Paul when he proceeded to Syria. But they stopped at Ephesus in the Roman province of Asia, which is now part of Turkey. Wow. The couple is described in the New Testament as providing a strengthening presence in early Christian churches. So they were very much a prominent fixture in the Catholic Church. And so, or should I say Christian Church. Paul was very generous in his recognition of them and his acknowledgement of, I guess what I want to try to get across is that he was indebted to them. He owed them so much. And so together, these three are credited with instructing Apollos, a major evangelist of the first century, and explaining to him the way of God very accurately. And so they were forced from their home under the persecution by Claudius. So that's pretty sad, but times were very rigid at that time, and they were very unbending. They were not flexible the way they are now, and so I think we should consider ourselves pretty lucky. And regardless of the strict restrictions for women at the time, it is alleged that Priscilla held the office of presbyter, and she is also thought to be the anonymous author of the Epistle to the Hebrews. Priscilla and Aquila are regarded as saints in most Christian churches that canonize saints. In the Catholic Church, the Roman Martyrology lists their feast day as July the 8th. And most churches in the Anglican communion follow suit. So they're pretty widely recognized as saints in more than one church. Now, the Greek Orthodox Church recognizes Aquila separately from Priscilla and as an apostle, and his feast day is on July the 14th. Now, in another source, St. Priscilla of Rome is described as a Christian noblewoman who served as a benefactor to the Christian community in Rome. And she supported St. Peter, the apostle, the first bishop of Rome. And her home was near the underground catacombs that served at the time as the Pope's headquarters. And so that's so interesting. So the catacombs of St. Priscilla are actually where Priscilla used to live. Wow, that's so interesting. However, this source lists Priscilla as being the wife of Marius or Manius Acilius Glabriel, a Roman politician who was executed by the Roman Emperor Domitian for crimes. And so that's a different version. We don't know if they were two separate men or if it's just basically a different version. It's hard to tell. Now, Manius refused to pay homage to the pagan gods, and so that is, he refused to worship the Roman gods, and that is why he was put to death. And so it was because he did not believe in the Roman gods. He recognized the Christian God. And so St. Priscilla had him buried on the land that they then owned in what once was something of a quarry. And she donated the property to the church so that others could also be laid to rest there, others who fell into the same situation. So what I'm gathering is that maybe this first gentleman came before the other husband that is mentioned in the first source. I'm not sure. And so I believe that this cemetery that Priscilla donated to the church was meant for people who were at the time regarded as sinners or criminals. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm not good at that. But it also came to be that eventually St. Priscilla was martyred near her for her Christian faith and buried right there. So, yeah, that's sad. Priscilla's catacombs were known since the earliest days of Christianity as the catacombs of Priscilla. And they are also referred to as the Queen of the Catacombs, and because such a large number of martyrs and saints and popes were once buried there and are still there. And so they extend, the grounds extend for 8 miles under the city of Rome. That's kind of scary. And so they contain a very large collection of early Christian iconography. That is, the walls. The walls are all done in early Christian iconography. And a lot of it is very interesting indeed, because I remember studying this. And so in the ceiling of one of the vaults of Priscilla's catacombs, there is an early depiction of Jesus as a good shepherd. Now, the very unassuming and harmless iconography of a good shepherd concealed the real fact that Christian worship of Jesus from those ready to persecute that faith, it was, you know what I'm trying to say. It concealed the idea that it was actually Christianity, and it gave people a chance to proclaim their faith in a very silent and private way, instead of being so verbal and vocal. And so, yeah, how would you have liked to have lived in those days? That's not very safe. Surrounding that good shepherd image is paradise imagery, that is related to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and it also displays many trays of fruit and a peacock, which indicates early Christian symbols of the bodies, the human bodies, physical resurrection. And so Jesus was depicted as a good shepherd for a very good cause. So, for example, the fruits were a very pagan symbol of pagan worship. But the Good Shepherd was actually very Christian. And so while the model of the pagan religious iconography was kept, other things surrounding it began to change. And so that early pagan culture was instrumental in placing the Good Shepherd as a Christly figure. And through this iconography is also a very prominent sort of inspiration based on the parable of the lost sheep. Now, here's what's even more interesting. Priscilla's catacombs also hold the earliest known image of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the child Jesus. And that would be in the Annunciation story as well. And so standing next to them is a prophet, an Old Testament figure who holds a scroll and points to the Bethlehem star, which was very significantly associated with the birth of Christ, King of the Kings. On to another story, a smaller one this time. Perpetua and Felicity were two Christian female martyrs of the 3rd century. Now, Vibia Perpetua was a very recently married, well-educated, noble woman. She was also only about 22 years old at the time of her death. And she had just mothered an infant son and was still nursing him when she was put at rest. So Felicity was a slave woman who had been imprisoned with her. And she was also expecting at the time and was martyred along with Perpetua. And so I guess that is, or that was typical of the culture then. And although we don't recognize slavery anymore, it was very prominent in society at that time. And that is what was expected of a slave. And so they were both put to death along with others at Carthage in the Roman province then of Africa. According to one text, 5 people were arrested and executed in military games that celebrated Emperor Septimus Severus, his birthday. That's terrible. I can think of better ways to celebrate a birthday, can you? Oh, so along with Felicity the slave and Perpetua the noble woman, there were also 2 free men, Saturninus and Secundulus, and a slave man named Revocatus. And they were all executed just out of, a whim for a game. Oh my God. All of the people I have just described were Christians, but not yet baptized. And so maybe that made a difference to their status. I don't know. And so to this group of 5, a man voluntarily added himself to the group, and his name was Satyrus. And he went before the magistrate and proclaimed himself to be a Christian, and off he went. Perpetua's first-person narrative was published after her death as part of the Passion story. so her account opens with conflict between her and her dad. And so her dad demanded that she recant her belief, maybe not out of hatred, out of fear for her persecution. And so sometimes it's hard to translate exactly what is what in these stories. And so, but Perpetua refuses to recant her faith and is soon baptized before being put into prison. And so Perpetua was imprisoned in Carthage in the days that led up to her martyrdom, her suffering and passing. She described these days and what she endured in her diary. And I don't know if I want to read that to you. It's she describes the physical and emotional torments that she suffered in the prison leading up to her martyrdom. And Perpetua suffered physically due to the heat, rough prison guards, and the cessation of regular breastfeeding. So that must have hurt too. But I think that also intended to imply how much she missed her son. And so she suffered physically due to the heat. And Perpetua also described how the prison conditions improved after she was able to bribe the guard with so that she and other martyrs could be moved to another part of the prison with her baby. And so her physical torment was also eased after she was able to breastfeed her child. So she was worried about her child, guys, not her pain. I can see that very clearly. And so she described her bodily ailments as most common in her narrative as the cycle of pain and relief she would feel in her breasts. So I think she was really so concerned about her son and leaving him behind with these corrupt figures that were controlling her environment at the time. All right, I think that that's quite profound for me, and I'm sorry to have gone on and on about it, but it's so interesting to know that if people could be moved by such faith, I'm wondering what other sorts of conditions would push them to hang on to that faith so tightly. It's hard to imagine. Regardless of the strict restrictions for women at the time, it is alleged that Priscilla held the office of presbyter, and she is also thought to be the anonymous author of the Epistle to the Hebrews. Priscilla and Aquila are regarded as saints in most Christian churches that canonize saints. In the Catholic Church, the Roman Martyrology lists their feast day as July the 8th. And most churches in the Anglican communion follow suit. So they're pretty widely recognized as saints in more than one church. Now, the Greek Orthodox Church recognizes Aquila separately from Priscilla and as an apostle, and his feast day is on July the 14th. Now, in another source, St. Priscilla of Rome is described as a Christian noblewoman who served as a benefactor to the Christian community in Rome. And she supported St. Peter, the apostle, the first bishop of Rome. And her home was near the underground catacombs that served at the time as the Pope's headquarters. And so that's so interesting. So the catacombs of St. Priscilla are actually where Priscilla used to live. Wow, that's so interesting. However, this source lists Priscilla as being the wife of Marius or Manius Acilius Glabriel, a Roman politician who was executed by the Roman Emperor Domitian for crimes. And so that's a different version. We don't know if they were two separate men or if it's just basically a different version. It's hard to tell. Now, Manius refused to pay homage to the pagan gods, and so that is, he refused to worship the Roman gods, and that is why he was put to death. And so it was because he did not believe in the Roman gods. He recognized the Christian God. And so St. Priscilla had him buried on the land that they then owned in what once was something of a quarry. And she donated the property to the church so that others could also be laid to rest there, others who fell into the same situation. So what I'm gathering is that maybe this first gentleman came before the other husband that is mentioned in the first source. I'm not sure. And so I believe that this cemetery that Priscilla donated to the church was meant for people who were at the time regarded as sinners or criminals. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm not good at that. But it also came to be that eventually St. Priscilla was martyred near her for her Christian faith and buried right there. So, yeah, that's sad. Surrounding that Good Shepherd image is paradise imagery that is related to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and it also displays many trays of fruit and a peacock, which indicates early Christian symbols of the bodies, the human body's physical resurrection. And so Jesus was depicted as a good shepherd for a very good cause. And now to shift gears, let's bake some cookies. Hi, I'm back. So I decided for now to stick with one sort of cookie, and maybe I'll do another kind another day. We'll have to see. And I chose Grace's almond cookies, my late mother's very famous recipe. And I have to tell you right now, just like the last time I made these for you, I need to play this by ear because it calls for 8 cups of flour, 8 eggs, 8 teaspoons or tablespoons of baking powder, or it's just, she used to bake cookies for the entire building at our old home abroad, and everybody got a dozen. So we used to bake a lot of cookies, right? So here are the ingredients, and I am basically going to play the amounts by ear. I'm going to be doing 1 cup of flour, and then we'll see, 2 eggs, 1/2 to 3/4 cup of oil, that's sunflower oil, and brown sugar, maybe about 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of coconut sugar, I'm not sure, and probably I'll throw in a little applesauce, baking powder, and 1 cup of almonds, and I'll probably throw in a few crumbs of walnuts and some raw pistachio nuts as well. We'll have to see. As for the brown sugar, I wanted to show you this neat little kitchen gadget that I have, and you put it inside of the brown sugar and it keeps the sugar fluffy and moist and prevents it from sticking and becoming very hard and dry. So I think that's a wonderful idea. First off, I'm going to preheat the oven to 350 degrees, and I'm going to blanch and roast the nuts. I want to make sure they're finely crumbled, so like that they're not too crunchy inside the cookie. And I'm going to let them roast just for a little bit, and then I'm going to take them out and prepare the cookie dough. I forgot to show you one more ingredient. It's going to take 1 teaspoon of artificial vanilla flavoring as well. So here are all the ingredients: the nuts, the flour, the sugars, the oil, the vanilla, the baking powder, and I decided to throw in, along with the lemon peel, a little orange peel as well. And I'm hoping that the eggs are going to be just right, but I might have to add another. I'm not sure. Well, it's more than 1 cup of flour. It's more like 3 cups of flour. So maybe, I could have put 1 egg less. But so it's 2 eggs and about 3 cups of flour. Okay, we'll continue as soon as the flour is dry. Just for the record, I'm not going to be using my stand-in mixer because I want to sort of feel it out with my hands and get used to how to figure out when the pastry dough or the cookie dough is actually ready and good enough. So I need practice with that, and I never like to get messy, but this time I have to. Well, guys, here they are. And I'm hoping that they can stay in one piece. I hope that you have enjoyed listening and watching. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And thank you for joining me today. I had an amazing time today. And it was kind of fun, too. Thank you for listening and watching. Bye. Bye.